I have the right to freely choose who I befriend and love.
This idea that everyone knows a Negro became such a core piece of the justice system that it was used in every case in the breaking of miscegenation or racial mixing law throughout the 1900s.
Yet in the 1990s, this racial fabric so beautifully woven together. No. Yet in November 1925, a sensational trial that attracted national attention for over a year was held dealing with a newly married couple.
Alice Jones.
And Leonard Kip Rhinelander.
This couple seemed like any other happy couple.
Until the press dug up some new information.
A headline-busting story was published titled, Leonard Rhinelander Marries Negro.
Alice's father was discovered to be of mixed-race ancestry, making Alice legally black.
Leonard's high-profile family pressured him to not only leave his wife, but also charge her for fraud. 6 weeks into their marriage, he did just that.
The following is a selection of the final arguments made by both attorneys.
Former Supreme Court Justice Isaac Mills representing Leonard Rhinelander. Members of the jury, I know you all to be decent men. Is it not true that there is no father among you who would not rather see his own son in his casket than to see him wedded to a mulatto woman? There is no mother among your wives who would not rather see her daughter with her white hands in her shroud than to see her wrapped in the embrace of a mulatto husband. Your verdict shall answer one more question of Holy Writ. Can the Ethiopian change his skin? You can have no hesitation to give this young man a chance to live and redeem the name that has been so bedeviled. From this horrible, unnatural, absurd union, I pray you grant him deliverance, swift and true.
Lee Parsons Davis, representing Alice Jones. He knew her color. He knew the color of her own family. He ate with them, and he knew the truth and liked it in spite of his family name. Did Alice Rhinelander voluntarily tell him she was pure white? And did he believe it? She is almost a total wreck. When she leaves this courtroom, she will be shunned by the colored race. She will be shunned by the white race. I say to you that on the evidence, you should bring in a verdict giving her a clearance on the charge of fraud. May the verdict before God be fair.
Alice ended up winning the case.
In exchange for public humiliation and ridicule, Alice was even pushed to disrobe in front of the all-male, all-white judge, jury, and attorneys to testify her apparent black heritage.
This trial served as a public and important example of the extent mixed-race Americans were victimized in court, win or loss, and how prepared America was to punish the blending of black and white.
I have the right not to keep the races separate within me.
All right, class, today we're going to use advisory time to fill out a survey. It's being done in all of Chicago public schools today, and it's very important, so please pay attention. Please be honest, and this can be quick and painless, okay? White. Black.
I was hoping to use this as some sort of passive form of resistance against the administration.
Native American.
Staying quiet, failing to raise my hand, and in that silent way, standing up
Hispanic.
for people who didn't include an option for me on the all-important Chicago Public High School Racial Ethnic Annual Survey.
Asian/Island Pacific.
Well, but of course, Miss Torres's final tally showed one missing.
Who didn't raise their hand? Chris, just choose one.
Can I choose more than one?
No, you're not supposed to.
But I'm not black or white. I'm part both.
I'm sorry, but those are the rules.
Well, I guess I'm feeling black today. Despite my friends laughing and having my back, I still felt like I lost.
Voices of the 90s, Curia Ramey. Having grown up sheltered in Berkeley, I think that when I do eventually end up living somewhere else, I'm going to probably be faced with a lot of new situations. My sister had a white boyfriend, and they went to visit his family in New York once. They were staying at his mom's house, and everything was fine. They were having a nice visit. Then this neighbor met my sister, and thought for a while, and came to the mother and said,
You know, there's something strange about her.
it must have been something about her features, and they ended up being kicked out of the house because the mom didn't realize that Caitlin was part black. I have a feeling this is something I might be faced with, but I haven't really traveled anywhere yet.
I have the right not to keep the races separate within me.
By mid-century, the one-drop rule had done its work. It had become a key paradigm within American culture. Yet by the 1960s, this simple classification principle had led to the unity of a broad span of different peoples. Instead of being a tool for further white supremacy, the one-drop rule had brought biracial and black individuals together for a united struggle that would change the nation. It was called the Civil Rights Movement.
Yet in the 1990s, this racial fabric, so beautifully woven together, would begin to fray at the ends as biracial Americans began to seek their own separate identity from the black population, a strong reminder of the separate and elitist biracial class that once existed in the South. This is Jet Magazine with the question that has been on our minds this decade. Are the children of mixed-race marriages
black
or white? We ask former civil rights activist and current associate professor of psychiatry at Harvard, Dr. Alvin Poussaint, for his thoughts, asking, why aren't people acknowledging their mixed-race heritage as black Americans?
Well, because they are biracial, they want to play down the significance of race. And in doing so, they say, I'm not black. But seldom, or never, do they say, I'm not white.
He added,
They resent being called black. They'd rather say they are Italian, Greek, or Hispanic, and not be identified with black, because they see it as a disadvantage, because American society has so many stigmas, and they don't like the black side of themselves.
Comments like these became a core piece of the debate that would rage throughout the 90s. Who should biracial Americans align with? And do they have the legal, moral, and ethical right to identify with something other than black on the 2000 census?
interview with Dr. Fairchild, Associate Professor of Psychology and Black Studies at Pitzer College in 1995, Ebony Magazine.
A multiracial designation on census forms could have the negative effect of reducing the size of the black population, which could have dire political consequences.
And added,
Given the history of oppression and dire straits in which African people find themselves, it is important for African Americans to maintain that identity and to stand up and be counted.
Lisa Jones, a biracial author of Bulletproof Diva, Tales of Sex, Race, and Hair.
I refer to them as multiracial nationalists. There is the idea that being labeled multiracial or biracial would move them away from the stigma of blackness, and that one would be anything but that. Are they trying to become honorary whites? I hope that they are standing for something more than the identity that gives them more privileges.
Such children should not be misled. A new label will not keep other kids from taunting them and calling them names.
Harold McDougall, head of the Washington NAACP. A multiracial category, if adopted by a significant portion of the minority population, could make it difficult for government agencies and civil rights organizations to track ongoing civil rights violations. Any effort that threatens to complicate, retard, or thwart further progress towards erasing the vestiges of slavery, segregation, and discrimination must be resisted.
Voices of the 90s, Teresa K. Williams. To prepare for an ethnographic study on the identity construction and presentation of gay Latino homeboys, in spring of 1994, I began to frequent popular gay Latino dance clubs and other informal gay Latino hangouts. As I stood observing and taking notes in one dance club setting, a Latino man approached me and began speaking to me in Spanish. When I politely replied, "No hablo español," he asked,
Are you white?
as his gaze locked onto my face. When I hesitantly replied, "I'm part white," he redirected.
Which parent is Mexican?
When I explained that my mother is Japanese and my father is Irish/Welsh American, this man uttered in discontent.
Japanese. No, you're lying. If you didn't want to dance, just say so.
Voices of the 90s, Mark DeRoe. The comment I kept getting from kids was,
"You're not white, you're black."
or
You're not black, you're white.
people saw me the way they wanted to. If they liked me, then I was one of them. If they didn't, then I wasn't. You knew how people felt about you by if you were one of them or not. When black kids said,
You're not really white.
they were trying to be nice. They were trying to give me a compliment. And I'm going, no, I am. For me, it wasn't something to be embarrassed about. For them, they would have felt awkward being the opposite of what they were. So they projected that onto me. Everybody keeps talking about the racism that white people have, the racism that black people have. I think everybody's basically a bigot, and they just don't realize it. I'm sure I'm a bigot. I probably think mulatto people are God's gift to this green earth way down in my psyche. You know, it's not something I'm proud of. But if we're willing to admit that we have prejudiced feelings, then we might have somewhere to start from. We'll have that understanding of ourselves so that we can temper our judgment, so that we can temper our actions, and find out what the truth is. I have the right not to justify my ethnic legitimacy.
The debate only got more fevered as the press sided with multiracial activists over traditional civil rights organizations.
In an ironic twist, it seems like blacks versus the mixed all over again.
Biracial celebrities were quickly drawn into the fight.
Some who identified as multiracial others as black.
Tiger Woods actually became a star for the multiracial community.
He identified himself as combination.
Caucasian, black, Indian, and Asian.
And he openly fought for the multiracial community.
In 1997, the Clinton administration's Office of Management and Budget had come to its decision on the 2000 census.
It was considered a compromise to a debate that was becoming a political basket case.
It stated that
Americans can now choose more than one racial category on the census and other federal forms.
The compromise being.
A new multiracial classification will not be added.
Because?
There is no general understanding of what the term means. Such a category would in effect create a new population and no doubt add to racial tensions and further fragmentation of our population.
The black press dropped the subject.
The national press announced a civil rights victory.
and multiracial Americans had a mixed response. But ultimately, whether they won or lost, history was made. I have the right.
Not to justify my existence in this world.
Not to keep the races separate within me.
Not to justify my ethnic legitimacy.
Not to be responsible for people's discomfort with my ethnic ambiguity.
I have the right to identify myself differently than how strangers.
Parents.
And brothers and sisters.
Identify me.
I have the right.
To create a vocabulary about being multiracial or multi-ethnic.
To change my identity over my lifetime, and more than once.
To have loyalties and identification with more than one group of people.
To freely choose who I befriend and love.
I have the right.